Then you do it.
Hello, my name is Gary Maloney, and I am here for a special edition of Sactown Slam. I am here with what I would consider a NorCal indie legend, and this guy is also my teacher for Supreme Pro Wrestling. He is the voice, Donavan Troi.
Hey, that's me! How are you, Gary? Can we call it the Supreme Podcast for tonight?
How about it?
I like it.
Okay, so I had a few questions I wanted to ask you.
Sure.
So.
A few. Only a few, though.
Just a few.
Okay.
And these were some questions that were well thought out.
Okay.
So, let me begin.
All right.
So, what was your first ever experience as a fan with pro wrestling?
Okay. Well, let's turn back the time. Let's turn back the hands of time and go to the late 1980s. My father used to watch WCW. And I was a small little voice. And I remember seeing on the TV a man wearing what I thought at that time was a bathrobe. And I told my dad, Daddy, why is that man wearing a bathrobe? And my dad was very upset with me because I did not pay the proper respects for the Nature Boy Ric Flair. And to this day, I every so often think Ric Flair's wearing a bathrobe. Fast forward from the late 80s to the mid 90s, I then fell back into pro wrestling when my sister and I were turning on, Monday Night Raw, and my first experience reconnecting with pro wrestling was when the Big Show, known then as the Giant Paul White, chokeslammed the Undertaker, and I was just fascinated on why is this big man attacking this creepy zombie man. And from there, I was hooked on pro wrestling, not only because of the physicality of pro wrestling, but because of the characters of pro wrestling and how they were over-the-top, entertaining characters that have their own rich stories and have their own unique attires and costumes and gear, and how they won over the audience either as with their words or with their actions. So I would say late 80s, too young to really understand. Mid 90s, definitely started to understand it more. And I would say I've been a fan of pro wrestling around the 97, 98 era of pro wrestling. Soon then, the Attitude Era definitely spun my love for pro wrestling.
Oh yeah, Attitude Era was great.
Yeah.
In fact, I mean, not to cut you off, my first experience with pro wrestling, I saw the 1990 Survivor Series. And I remember one of the first things ingrained into my memory was watching Ted DiBiase come out there with The Undertaker for the first time. And I'm like, oh my god, this guy is freaky. And then he rolled back his eyes, and I had to run behind my mom because it scared the ever-living crap out of me.
He's a scary man.
Very much so.
Yeah.
But I fell in love with Undertaker there. And then fast forward a couple of years, I kind of got in touch with that, I am a big thing side when I saw Shawn Michaels hit Marty Jannetty with the super kick and doing the barbershop promo.
Right.
So that was when I first really connected with wrestling too. So
good memories.
So next question.
Okay.
when and why did you start with the wrestling business?
Sure. So in the local scene of pro wrestling, the independents, as you will, I did not get involved and understand the independents pro wrestling in California, specifically Northern California, until the very early 2000s when my sister's sister, she was training at BTW, Big Time Wrestling, which is a training school and wrestling promotion in Newark, California. And me and my sister would go to those shows. And my sister's sister was training under the tutelage of BTW, and that's where I was, introduced to the independents. And I started to make the connections of, you don't just start wrestling right at the time WWF or WCW or ECW. You actually had to put in the time and the work and the ethic and develop your character and your repertoire and all of that in a different league before joining the mainstream leagues. So that's, I would say, the early 2000s is when I came to the light bulb went out, bing, that there was an independent scene in Northern California. I was going almost exclusively to Big Time Wrestling for 5 or 6 years, and then it was when I went to high school in Union City, James Logan High School, whoop whoop. I met Matthew Theall, who was my best friend, and still my friend today, but not my best friend because he has a life. But he introduced me saying, "Hey, did you watch this cool pro wrestling documentary that came out called Beyond the Mat?" And I'm like, "No, I didn't hear about it. What is it all about?" And he goes, "Let's watch it." And it talks about another wrestling promotion that's in Northern California that isn't BTW. I'm like, there's another wrestling promotion in California that's near us and we don't know about them? And so I watched the documentary, and that's when I came, again, another light bulb, bing, that APW, All Pro Wrestling, was 2 towns next to us. And I started going to APW in 2006, and I was a fan of the product from 2006 until I joined the promotion in 2010. So I'm not sure that answers your question.
I think that checks more than the boxes I wanted to check, but
you didn't give me any rules, Gary. I just start talking. You better cut me off sometimes then.
Oh, no, I'm thoroughly enjoying this,
okay,
actually.
Great. I didn't answer why, but it's okay.
Oh, I think you did.
Okay, good.
Kind of need this to be able to look at this, so
Okay.
We'll set that back up in a second.
Okay.
Okay, tell me about some of your teachers, and what did they teach you, and what impressions did they leave on you?
Okay. Let's see. So in 2010, when I joined the APW promotion, I was being mentored and taught by the owner, the APW godfather, Roland Alexander, who had many, many decades of experience of running a wrestling school and running a wrestling promotion and connecting with other companies to develop the King of the Indies and really establishing Northern California pro wrestling and putting it on the map. So he specifically was my first trainer, my first teacher, if you will, and he's the one that helped craft the specifics on how to be a good ring announcer, a good host, a professional in the business of pro wrestling. He took the time on several occasions to speak with me before the shows, after the shows, during the week, as we'd have trainings through the phones, or I would go to his house, watch lots of reruns of Baggage, and then we would watch footage, and I was able to really absorb like a sponge. Was one of his many examples of how to be a really good student, is absorbing like a sponge. And he was just one of the few people during that time that you could just feel his passion and his love for the industry and the business everywhere he went. And he touched so many people's lives that I'm very honored and very privileged to have sat under his tree for 3 or 4 years. And it's one of the experiences I'll never be able to forget. After his passing in 2013, I started to work more with wrestling personified Rick Luxury. He is, I would say, one of my second mentors and teachers on just character development, ring psychology, storylines, kind of piecing things together to be kind of a complete package. But on the road to meeting and connecting with Rick Luxury, I also had wrestling trainers, because I went through the APW wrestling boot camp before I could be, certified through APW to be a wrestling manager. And my trainers during that experience was Jekyll's the Jester and the Mountain from Stone Mountain, Larry Blackwell. And those two gentlemen, definitely Hall of Fame superstars in Northern California, really put into place how to properly execute bumps and rolls and develop promo skills and develop the ring psychology and character development that I definitely, needed. So I understood how to kind of properly put that all together and present a well-developed character, along with Shane Mai, who was one of the production managers and directors of APW. And, it's a team. It really takes a village, to raise some students and talent. And those have been some of my greatest mentors and teachers to really help me to become the performer I am today, alongside some very, very talented trainers and entertainers like Sir Samurai, Mr. Primetime, Zach Reeb, the Pink Mink himself, Marcus Mack, the greatest mind in professional wrestling, Matthew Theall. These have all been gentlemen that have helped pave the way before my time and given me opportunities to become the voice Donavan Troi.
Well, that's actually a very interesting answer, and answers a lot more than I had expected. So
you asked one question, but it spawns off to many things, huh?
Yes, it does. So, when did you first join a company, and when did you become a fixture within it?
Okay. So when I joined the APW boot camp and the APW promotion in 2010, that was my first. That was my first opportunity. That was my first school. I was introduced to the behind the scenes of the company by Matthew Theall, the greatest mind in professional wrestling, who introduced me to the open tryout. There was an open tryout at APW for the role of the ring announcer, and when we performed, I was awarded the position of ring announcer in August of 2010, and I became a staple of APW throughout that time. I was the sole ring announcer for several years. Then we introduced Stephen Lawrence as our backstage interviewer, who would also co-ring announce with me, and we would alternate shows where he would be the ring announcer, or I would be the ring announcer, or he was the backstage interviewer, or I was the backstage interviewer. So we shared the role from 2000, end of 2012, 2013, 2014. And then since 2014, I have had different managerial roles at APW, and then just recently, in the last couple of years, I've returned to be the ring announcer at APW, and now I share those duties with Tough Enough's very, very capable AJ Kirsch. And so AJ and I now alternate shows as ring announcer at APW. And so APW has been my first school, my first promotion, and my first fixture in the Northern California pro wrestling universe, if you will.
It's very interesting.
Good.
So
You asked it. I hope you're learning.
I learned a lot actually today. Some of these things I didn't know, and some of these things are very interesting.
Good.
So, next question. When did you first meet Sir Samurai, Mike Miller, and Scott Armstrong? And
Okay.
what were your impressions of them?
Okay. So I first met Sir Samurai, Mr. Punishment, the Honor Society's very, very capable superstar. I actually met him at the APW garage. He was working on and off with us at APW for Gym Wars. And he would be involved in different mini storylines at APW, and I met him there. In terms of impression, I would say I really enjoyed Samurai in those early days. You know, he was always one of the most friendliest individuals. He always shared about his experiences in other companies and in the ring. Even at those early days of me connecting with him, very professional, very interested in other people's experiences. He would share some of his own loves outside of pro wrestling. So I wouldn't say that Samurai and I connected right away, but he definitely was someone that I wanted to respect and had a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? I had a lot of respect for him, and I really, really admired him. That was the word I was looking for. I really admired him because he didn't always he wasn't the type of individual that he would always do the same thing. He was always willing to go outside the box and connect with the fans and go out there and just give it all. And it didn't matter who he was in the ring with. He wanted to make sure that the audience got their money's worth. And I definitely looked up to that, and I definitely look up to him now. Almost 9 years later, or going on 9 years later, he is definitely one of the strongest competitors we have in the NorCal scene, and I would definitely say one of my coolest friends I've met in pro wrestling. Mike Miller, I actually met him a few years after I had been involved in pro wrestling. I met him at Pro Wrestling Bushido, and he was working alongside Bobby Hart of Pro Wrestling Bushido. And Mike, at the time, I just knew Mike as a commentator. I knew he had done some ring announcing work before that. I knew he did a lot of help with connecting with technology and microphones and sound equipment. So Mike was definitely the guy that he would get things done. And, always very professional, always in a suit, always in a tie. To this day, that's all I ever see him in. When he's not in that, I'm like, what's wrong with you, guy? He's always in a suit and tie. It obviously wouldn't be until many years later that he would develop into more of a managerial personality character on the shows. But I would say in the early days, Mike Miller was always the go-to guy for technology and tech and equipment, and worked really well and a lot of the commentary teams that we had developed during that time. Like probably 2012, 2013 is probably when I connected with Scott, with Mr. Miller, Mr. President Miller. Scott Armstrong, I would say I probably met a little bit during that time also. I knew Scott had been a pro wrestler before. He had gotten a really bad injury, so the times that I would connect with Scott would be at SPW shows. He would come out and volunteer. He would help donate for raffles and prizes. Him and his family have always been big supporters of SPW. His wife, Carrie, would come in and donate her time as a therapist, muscle therapist and massage therapist. And his kids would help out with ring crew, selling tickets and selling merch. So, he and I connected pretty quickly at SPW. And he's such a love of sci-fi and all that kind of fantasy realms that we connected really well. And so Scott and I work a lot together for SAC anime events in Sacramento area. And then Mike and I work together for Stockton events and Lodi Con and Central Valley Con and Modesto Con. So I would say that Scott and Mike have definitely been my con leaders. They definitely help us connect with our fan base, and definitely respect both men tremendously. They've given us a lot of opportunities to bring pro wrestling to the fans and pro wrestling to different people that may not knew about the pro wrestling NorCal scene. So, yeah, some cool dudes, that's for sure.
Okay, next question.
What are you trying to say? I'm talking too much?
No, I think there's nothing to ask about on all of these questions.
Good. There's no follow-up. I answer the questions completely, huh?
Exactly.
Oh, that's good.
I don't think there's anything left to fill the blank with, you know?
Good.
Anyway, so who were some of your first students that you taught as a teacher, or some of the first students that you worked with?
Sure. That's a good question. I actually have never answered that question. Well, a few of these other questions I actually never answered directly either. So you got some good questions there, sir. I would say I have a background. This question you didn't ask, but I'm going to reveal information anyways. I have about 20 years of theater and theatrical and drama history. I was involved with an improv team with my high school, and I donated my time for 10 years, kind of like an improv alumni coach. So I've always had the experience and the training of being like a character, being a host, being someone that's in front of a camera. So I had that going into my pro wrestling training. And so the pro wrestling training, both the managerial and the ring announcing training that I got from APW, just kind of cemented and filled in the wrestling and the ring announcing gaps that I didn't have. And a lot of people like to, ask me about, their, my feedback on their characters or my feedback on their performance. And some of the talent that I've worked with early in their careers, helped them with either ring announcing or helping them with hosting or helping them with some character development, was Ethan White. Helped him understand a little bit more about the ring announcing universe. And now he's quite successful as the Berkeley Brawler. Oops. Maybe I shouldn't say that. He is very successful with other characters that he has developed. But I'm happy that I've helped him a little bit along the way with kind of connecting things a little bit more smoother, especially when he was ring announcing early in his career, as well as Lucian Delight, what many people claim as my biggest rival. You laugh because you've seen the rivalry up close and personal.
Yes, yes, I
A little tidbit. I'm the one that actually named Lucian Delight. We came up with the name together.
You know, that doesn't surprise me, actually.
This probably segues into another question later on. Yes, I helped coin the phrase Lucian Delight. That's a whole different episode and story all of its own. But I also helped Lucian understand the ring announcer realm because he was a ring announcer prior to being a manager of champions. And then I also helped a little bit with Bruno Beretta, who also is on the cusp of transitioning from being a ring announcer to a wrestler. So I would say that the last couple years I've had the opportunity to help a lot of the local ring announcers, even if they turn into some other role in the business. I've helped a lot of the ring announcers in the NorCal scene and teaching them just the standards that I like to hold as a ring announcer and a host, and being able to be that professional role that companies deserve and the companies need. So I would say those are my original talent I've worked with.
All right.
You have this fascination with moving it, but I thought it was fine where it was. But it's okay. Do what you gotta do.
It's just it's easier for me to see and do this and then move it back.
Okay.
But okay, so my next question would be
the segue question, which is good.
How and why? Oh wait, hold on.
Number 7.
Yeah. How and why did you come up with the names Rachel Guts and Gary Supreme?
Okay. So, a lot like Lucian Delight, we needed to come up with some names for some of my students turned personalities, turned roles in the company. I'll help you. Look at that. I can help you. It's not that hard. Look at that. Bam! So, another one of my students currently is Rachel Guts. She's a personality and ring announcer. And she did not like her last name. She did not like her last name to be used in the wrestling industry because it's too mainstream of a last name. And she really wanted to change it to something else. Unfortunately, Rachel really wanted to change her first name also. And she actually wanted to change her first name to Guts. And I just couldn't really wrap my head around the audience being able to accept that, because they had already known her as Rachel. That it had been already over a year, that it would be too much of a transition for them to be like, oh, you're now Guts, or Miss Guts, or, Monster Guts, or like, who knows. So I said, okay, how about we take the name that you like and just throw it on as your last name, and you could be Rachel Guts. Still acknowledging that you have something that you like, but then also acknowledging that your first name is the name that everyone knows you as. And it kind of stuck. And it took a while. We butted heads for many months. And I think she made the connection when a lot of the wrestlers and the fans would come up to her and address her as Rachel. And that she made that, I think a little light bulb went out. Bing! That she was like, you're right, that it would be difficult for people to address and accept her as a different name because she's already had the experience of being Rachel. So now she's definitely been more accepting and acknowledged that she is Rachel Guts in the pro wrestling world. And be curious to see how far we're able to take that character and see where it goes. With Gary Supreme, the gentleman sitting next to me here, I know that you also thought, maybe it'd be easier to create a character and that it'd be easier to become that character And I don't know exactly which month or which show it was, but I just threw out the idea of...
It was the anniversary show last year.
Oh, okay. Well, excuse me. You know it. I thought about it. I was like, you have overcome so much in your life, and you have sacrificed, and you have persevered, and you have a lot of courage. And to me, that shows your supremacy of taking what life has given you and overcome it little by little. And I think that makes you a supreme candidate to take the term supreme and tacking it on to your name. And because everyone already knew you as Gary, it would make no sense to also give you a new first name. So it made more sense to also just create a new last name for yourself. And as time went on, Gary Supreme became a thing, and people recognize you as such, and it's awesome. It's awesome. And that two of my students I have helped rename, and both of the last names click.
Yeah. For those that weren't there for Summer Sac Anime, when you have over 1,000 people screaming Gary Supreme, I think you did something right in naming me.
Whoop whoop! Awesome.
Okay. What was the inspiration for Chatterbox?
Oh, I've never had this question asked before, so this is cool. So, let's see. Let's turn back the hands of time. I was working exclusively at SPW at the time as a ring announcer, and I was managing at other companies already. And SPW as a company, they wanted to offer me the role of a manager character, but they kind of wanted me to do something different that wasn't the same kind of character that I was doing elsewhere. Sure, go ahead. I think you want to ask something.
So, something different from, like, Glamorous and Fabulous Enterprises.
Right, and I was also managing, like, the Thunder League, so I was kind of wearing, like, baggy clothes, and I was wearing, like, a lot of red, and I was kind of doing, like, a fitness kind of, like, comic kind of character, and I was also kind of like a yelly, over-the-top, screamy kind of a manager. So they wanted something different, and at the time, Sal, who was the promoter at the time with SPW, Sal Tomaselli, he offered me this idea of what would you think about managing Jekylls? And Jekylls, who was one of my original wrestling trainers at APW, he has a very distinctive characteristic. He is a jester. Not a clown, a jester. Very big difference. And I was thrilled of the opportunity. However, I knew I couldn't be the same Donavan character. I couldn't wear the same attire and gear and have the same personality as those other managerial characters I've developed. And so me and Sal exchanged emails and conversations over a course of a couple of weeks, and we came up with a story where I would kind of embody this more like face paint, creepy, kind of demented, what we kind of call like a Batman animated villain. And I took that suggestion from him and I said, okay, all right, this is a challenge I'm willing to go all out on. And, I spoke at Jekylls at several shows prior to the reveal of Chatterbox. And I did my research on characters that really embodied animated villains, and so I looked at, very iconic Batman villains. The Riddler, the Penguin, and of course, the Joker. And I kind of put them all into this melting pot in my brain, and I stirred it all up, threw in a little bit of face paint that's similar to Jekyll's, threw in the colors that's similar to Jekyll's and his entourage, then known as the Freaks, and I came up with what developed as Chatterbox, umbrella and all, and a very unique cackle. And my face paint design, which I just kind of, explored the World Wide Web to find something that was unique, but that wasn't a direct copy of, the Joker or a direct copy of Jekyll's. And I'm happy that the character itself has found his own fandom. People really enjoy that character's work. So much that even Timothy Thatcher, the very, very world-known wrestler.
He was part of Reno Scum, wasn't he?
Timothy Thatcher? No. No. Timothy Thatcher is part of Evolve, former Evolve champion. He's former APW Universal champion. He's wrestled all around the world. He gave me a really great compliment at one of the shows he was coming to visit, that he really enjoyed the character. So that was, one of the greatest compliments to get from Timothy Thatcher, was that he really enjoyed the character. And so the character has evolved since then, since I don't work with Jekyll's directly anymore as the Chatterbox character. And so it's allowed me to kind of explore the attire, and I kind of explored the makeup design and the umbrella colors, and but I really enjoy the character when the character has a purpose. So it's definitely not something I want to market as the only version of Donovan you will find, but he's definitely become more like a kind of like a special character. He comes out on special occasions, so it's really cool to have Chatterbox as an option, and I think I'm curious to see how that character evolves again when he's asked to come out and play.
I was about to say, could you give me a little Chatterbox laugh for me?
Of course, Gary. Of course.
Okay, there we go. So, what would your message be to anyone who would want to be an announcer?
Okay. Well, I have 6 ring announce host students at this very moment in time. It's 5:27 p.m. on January 21st, 2019, and I have 6 students. That is crazy. Unbelievable. What that tells me is that as a performer, as an entertainer, as a ring announcer, as a host, I must be doing something right. I've worked for over 40 promotions, close to my 9 years in the business. I've traveled outside of the state to Nevada, Arizona, Texas for pro wrestling. Not claiming I know it all, because I definitely don't. I'm not claiming I'm the best, but I definitely have a sense of purpose, and I definitely have a sense and an understanding of my role as a ring announcer and a host. And I want to teach people, and I am teaching people, both men and women alike, that you have to own the role. You have to respect and be the professional in that role. It is not a throwaway role. It's not a role that should be taken lightly. You have to understand the purpose of the role. And if anyone out there listening and watching, being a ring announcer is not just about wearing a suit and a tie and holding a microphone and saying a bunch of words on a cue card. You are selling a product. You are what I like to now coin as the used car salesman. You are selling a product with your voice, with your energy, with your body posture. You are the first and sometimes the last person the fans see and or hear. And it's important that you are representing the company that you're working for. And I've had, as I alluded to earlier, I've had the opportunity, I've had the privilege of working for over 40 wrestling promotions in my close to 9 years. And it's not because someone's been forced to do that. I've definitely earned those opportunities, and I want to keep earning opportunities because I hold myself at a level of respect and a level of professionalism and a level of quality that being in that role matters. And I hope that some of those teachings that I've learned from some amazing mentors and teachers rub off on my students and anyone that hopes to also become a ring announcer or host. Get trained. Really find someone that is going to help you along. And if that's, through professional training, or acting or improv or, taking classes in radio or entertainment, connecting with other ring announcers or hosts or people that do podcasts. Get as much experience, as much training, as much opportunities as possible, because that's what's going to help you be successful. And it, like I said earlier, it's not about just reading off things off a card and a cue card and making it work. It's really about becoming that figure, becoming that role that you are able to blend, another word I use, blend through the role of I'm the ring announcer, I'm the host, I'm promoting, you are reporting things, you are showcasing that what the fans are experiencing is something worth their money and worth their time. And I've had a lot of experiences that I'm so privileged to have had. And it doesn't happen overnight. It definitely does not. I will tell you, it was really rough in the first several months when I had the role, because I really wanted just to master it. And it's not about mastering it right away. It's about becoming comfortable and confident and being able to go out there, show in and show out and perform at a very high level and be able to be flexible and be fluid and execute everything you need on point at a level of professionalism that is clear, that is energized, and allowing the fans to go, you know what? That guy's cool. That guy represents this brand, represents this company, represents our show with true respect and dignity. And I hope that those promotions who have worked with me in that capacity has gotten their money's worth, as well as the fans have gotten their money's worth and understand and know, oh, Donovan's here? It's going to be a good show. I'm going to know what's happening. So, yeah, I would say that those are some good key points. Get trained. Get professionally trained, and then go out there and test what you got.
Okay, and